You're listening to a lifestyle podcast with Lovoni and Sarah. Our goals: to inspire good health and well-being, empowerment, beauty and joy, offering support and friendship as we share our journeys in the hopes it helps you. Hello my friends, and thanks for tuning in to what was once the Waiting Room podcast. I'm Lovoni, and together with my co-host Sarah, we want to let you know our podcast has changed its name from the Waiting Room podcast to simply Lovoni and Sarah. Now, along with the name change, we're doing some rebranding and developing a website, all very exciting, and we'd love you to come along on this adventure with us.
Eating wholesome, nutrient-dense food doesn't have to be expensive. In today's episode, Lovoni and I discuss ways to eat well without breaking the budget. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Waiting Room podcast, Cheap Eats. Losing weight and getting healthier is affordable when you're equipped with some good ideas, some of which you all may already know. We're going to share what we do to get healthy and save some money here and there in the process. But just to recap, we're recording today directly after our last episode because Lovoni is away this week coming with work, so we're not going to be talking about our goals or what we've achieved or setting new ones because we've done nothing on those yet because we're literally straight into the next one. But Lovoni does have something that you're busting to share or ask.
Well, our last episode was about guilt for those. That was episode 10, was about guilt. It was a pretty heavy episode, and I wanted to throw that whole what's your guilty pleasure thing in at the end just to lighten it up a little bit, and I forgot to do that. I have asked you
to keep it clean. Let's not make people feel squirmy.
That'd be kind of boring anyway. So, Sarah, I have to ask you, what's your guilty pleasure?
I think mine is listening to country music.
Oh my God, I didn't know that about you.
I know.
We can listen to it while I'm there. Oh, I like country music.
I love a bit of country.
Don't judge us, anybody that's listening to this.
It makes me feel better about my life because they're always so damn sad or something awful's happened. They're always singing about something really bad, aren't they?
I don't notice that so much.
Someone's left me. Oh, they are. They're always like, someone's left me, so I've drunk a bottle of whiskey.
Well, there's usually lots of whiskey involved.
Always whiskey. It's always a woman that's done something wrong.
Right.
Or a man that's cheated. They've put car... straight down their car. So then I feel really good about my life. I'm like, oh wow.
That is too funny.
So I do
Your
like
guilty pleasure is country music. I never would have guessed that.
There you go, I've shared.
Mine's plastic cheese. I call it plastic cheese because...
cheap cheese.
The stuff that's just, I don't know.
Do you mean the stuff that's like in cellophane that you put in your burger, like burger cheese? Oh, man, that's horrible.
Oh, no. Not just to sit and munch on it. I like really good cheese. That's my disclaimer. I really do love good cheese. Blue cheese. Yummy cheese. But if I'm having it melted on some toast or, in a grilled cheese sandwich, it has to be that. I mean, I don't think it resembles food, really.
Well, it's just chemical, isn't it, really?
Possibly. And granted,
never
I don't
even seen
eat it
a cow.
every day. No, right?
No.
My cousin came to stay with me one time. One of my cousins came to stay with me one time in Canada, and he saw me have that, melted on some tomato. And he was so shocked. He goes, "Oh, that's your dirty little secret." That's what he called it. Because, I had this show talking about,
perfect food.
Buying local and all the rest of it. And there I was with that. That's my dirty little secret, which my guilty pleasure, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
It just melts so well.
I love the fact that you're trying to
justify it.
It just melts so well.
And it's a good segue into cheap eats, really, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's hilarious.
Because I think people are used to cheap food. We're too used to cheap food, and the reason why I say this is because people were bitching about the cost of eggs. I don't know if it's the same over there.
I see what you mean.
But here, people making jokes about eggs and how much they cost, and suddenly the price had gone up. And I was thinking, even if they're $5 for a dozen eggs,
Yeah.
you can still get 2 meals for 4 people out of that. I mean, it's still very inexpensive. I'm so lucky because I get farm eggs.
So, can I just check that? Have you got an egg shortage there as well as here then, have you? Is it like everywhere?
I don't know because I buy... Well, no, we do because people are joking about the whole egg thing. But I get eggs from just a little hobby farm where the chickens just run around outside unless it's, snowing. They go inside, obviously, because it's too cold. But, and we just, pay $3 for a dozen and I open them and it's like jewels. They're all different colours, blues and things. And every time I open a carton of them, I'm always like, oh, they're so pretty. So I'm lucky like that.
Yeah.
But I think that we're used to not paying a lot for food. Here, anyway. I mean, there's a lot of people to feed in this country.
Don't you think? Because I'm a bit of an egg snob, actually. I do like a good egg. So, like a really nice
dark
yolk
yolk.
to it. It's different, isn't it? And I quite like the blue one. So I am a bit of an egg snob. But
That's
other
good.
things I've learnt to be a bit better with because, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, I would be an avid Waitrose shopper and all of the lovely things. And now, granted, it is lovely to go in there. So Waitrose is kind of a really high-end supermarket over here. And some really lovely different things in there. So if I want to get something a bit different, I will pop into Waitrose. But I can't even... I think I popped in just before Christmas, and the time before that, I don't know how long, because we had an Aldi open up just down the road from me here, and I'd never been into an Aldi before. I thought I was going to get lost. I was like, I don't know what to do. And it's completely transformed the way that I shop because it's literally half of the price.
Oh, it's amazing. And you have to pack your own bags and pay, here it's like a quarter, 25 cents for a cart. But I'm like, so? I mean, you should be taking your own bags to the shops anyway, right?
Yes, exactly.
But my husband introduced me to Aldi. They call it Aldi here. It was never in Australia when I left my homeland. It was never there, and I think I didn't know it until I came to the US. I don't even know.
Right.
Maybe it's in Canada now, but it wasn't in the 9 years that I lived there. And, Lawrence, my husband, would say that that's how he fed a family of 6 on one income was Aldi because... that's where he shopped and everything was, about half the price. But I also like the fact that because they don't get their produce in like mass quantities, it's usually quite fresh. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that will argue the point, but I'm just going on the ones that I've shopped at. And I have shopped at Aldi in 5 different states in this country. So I think that I, can speak
the vegetables and the fruit has always, since I've been going in there, which has only been, I don't know, a year maybe, has been, really, really good. Really
they
good.
Have a really good, they have organic things. They have a lot of gluten-free. I don't know about there, but here they do. Like gluten-free is massive. I think that they have a lot of gluten-free. I like the fact that it's not huge.
Yes,
this isn't going to be the Aldi episode, but... For somebody
sponsored by.
I mean, it is inexpensive. In Australia, Aldi sell all sorts of things. They sell freaking wetsuits for...
you do here, The centre aisles, I mean, it's like a little...
seasonal stuff.
Shop in heaven, exactly. But, so I think you do sometimes get what you pay for, don't you? So things like eggs, things like meat probably is one of the ones I would say is I feel it's worth spending a bit more on meat and having it less often than...
Getting the grain-fed, pasture-raised.
Yeah, and just to be kinder to the animals, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's exactly. Aldi really, they have sections like that too.
Yeah?
Yeah, here they do.
Hours.
Yeah.
Right, okay. It's not such a big... I mean, I think you have some choice within it, but it's not such a sort of dedicated area within. But I say mine's a really small store, so I can't speak for all of them.
They even have buffalo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the one that I go to, they have ground bison. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that in Mum's room.
Probably no Aldis in the UK. See, you probably don't have very many bison. No, I mean,
probably not.
I like that. you can see, in a store that's small like that, get your words out, Lovoni, that you can find that. But that's the thing too. If you are wanting to save money with your grocery shopping, you have to look at the stores that you're shopping in. Like I have a neighbour who I know he's not going to listen to this, so he's a bit of a dick, I have to say.
You watch. This will be the one that you just tuned into.
But once upon a time, I think, Aldi had a bit of a rep for people that, I don't know, food stamps or whatever. And I think, well, you shouldn't judge it or judge people that are doing that. The fact that they can, shop
just
and
get the
find
most for their money.
Get the most for their money. And so that's what he associates it with. Now, the guy's always bitching too that he has no money, yet his kids, they have like the latest and greatest, equipment and stuff. Labeled clothes, and I'm not judging him, but he's like, Lawrence mentioned to him about Aldi, and he goes, there's no way I'm shopping in there. And I think, well, don't bitch about money then.
It's really odd, isn't it? People's perceptions of things. I have to say, I probably was, not to that extent, but I probably was one of those people. I would never go in an Aldi, ever.
Oh, see, I didn't know it as that. I went into it just not knowing any of that.
But because of, probably it was just the unknown.
Having to pack your own groceries, Sarah.
I mean, I am a princess. It was more because you couldn't get branded things in there, at the time.
Right.
And I thought, I'm like, well, how am I going to get the things that I know that I love? Because I can't get them in there. And it's only since now, getting over myself and getting in there and then realising what a fabulous place it is.
Right.
That you can also choose some brands, but actually a lot of the things are exactly the same. Now, I would say, I think to caveat this, that it's worth in any different supermarket finding your way around it a little bit and just trying some things, because there are some things that I've tried and thought, no, I'm sorry, they're just not as good. If you blindfold tested it,
right.
I just don't like it. It's not. So there's a few things that I do go to different supermarkets for, because you can only get them in those particular ones. It might be, to give you an example, my son drinks a Tesco own brand squash, so it's not expensive. But we've tried them in all the other different supermarkets, and they're just not the same. They've got a different taste to them. So off I go to blooming Tesco just to go and get the squash,
right.
And then go and get a few bottles of it at a time. So there are some things that I think it's worth, no matter which supermarket you're in, giving things a try, genuine try for the first time. And if you don't like it, then just keep a mental note of, okay, there might be 5 or 6 things I've got to go somewhere else to go and get them, because I can't get those in there. But as a general thing, and particularly with the fresh things, in my experience, this lower cost supermarket is just as good as the other ones that I've been going to, and I'm enjoying the process of
discovering it.
Yeah, and shopping sort of sensibly, or you making my money go further.
Right.
And actually, I see it as a bit of a challenge to think, I wonder if I can get my weekly shop for, whatever, £50 this week. I wonder if I can do it. Whereas, if I was ordering for an online shop with a different supermarket, it's normally at least half as much of that again, if not double. So I like to set myself a bit of a challenge, how far I can make my grocery budget stretch, and different meals that you're coming up with, because that's the other thing. Sometimes meals are expensive with all the extras, aren't they, that you put in, whether it's spices, whether it's the different cheeses, not your plastic cheese, different cheeses that you've then got to put on.
Judge.
I can't help judging that.
Cake country music girl.
Right? I know, check me out.
So, you were talking about, going to different stores, which made me think about the whole buying in bulk thing. Do you have a Costco over there?
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
okay.
I've never been to one.
I love Costco because they have awesome buyers. And I think this has been my experience of Costco in 2 different countries, is that it's great for things, if you have the space to buy things in bulk. I was going to say, it's storing, because you've got to get like 48 rolls of loo paper. But people...
That's okay. I've got an 18-year-old son that lasts me a week.
Oh, my God.
He'll kill me. I'm joking.
Hopefully he's not going to listen to this. But I think people think, too, that buying in bulk is a good way to save money. But it is only if it's stuff that you use all the time.
Yeah.
So if you go and you get, buy in bulk of spinach and you're not using that and you don't wilt it down and freeze it, then, it's a waste of money. So that's just something to think about. I think a really good thing if people are buying in bulk or buying bigger packets of things, are frozen fruits and vegetables, because as long as you're using them and you have the space for them, if you love, berries, for example, they're not in season. So one, you're eating them from, a country quite a long ways away. They're not going to be at all local, but they're going to be more expensive. And I try to, I love eating berries almost every day. But what I do is I buy them frozen during the, the winter months here.
Yeah.
And then I cook. So because I think if you just let them thaw, they're not very nice. So I make almost like a jammy thing with them. And I take a little bit of monk. It's called monk sugar. So it has no carbohydrates in it.
Monk sugar?
Monk sugar, yeah. Monk fruit sugar. Yeah, it's a fruit, and it's not doctored. I mean, it's processed, right? But so it will add the sweetness to it, and then I just keep the lid off, let the juices sort of thicken in the berries, do a little squirt of some lemon juice for, brightness, and then pop that in the fridge, and then I have that instead of, fresh berries during the winter months. And it's certainly a cheaper way to buy. It's the same with vegetables. You can't turn your nose up at frozen vegetables because they're picked and harvested, and they're going to be fresher than, unless you've got them out of your garden or bought them from, a farm, they're going to be really fresh, which then leads me into things like, if you do have leftover stuff like spinach or kale, something like that, that you can just blanch and dry and then pop it in the freezer. And so I'm making, I'm going to make this ham, because we've got like a whole lot of ham. We were given ham, big leg of ham. I'm going to do these ham, spinach and egg tartlets using the spinach that I have up in the freezer that I've just blanched myself and put in there. So it's about, I think it's about ways to save money too, is like planning, like you were saying, plan your meals just and buy what you need.
So you waste it.
So you're not wasting it, rather than just going shopping, like shop with a list. And I know most people probably do shop with a list. But it's a good idea to have a plan, so then you're not, going to be throwing things away. And meat, you were talking about meat before, and just, here especially in the US or in all of North America, people eat a lot of meat, and there's a lot of people to feed here, so there's a lot of industrialized feedlots and whatnot. And I try and, I used to, when I lived in Canada, I used to buy direct from the farms. But here I don't, I haven't come upon that many. If I'm at the farmer's market during the summertime, I try and buy, meat from the farmers there, if they're there. But, use it more as a secondary thing. I think we usually think of meat as the primary part to our plate, and then the vegetables are secondary, or the starch and whatever. But I was talking to my husband about this last night, and I said, because he did feed a family of 6 on not a lot of money, he had a budget and he kept within that budget, and I said, what are some things that you did? And he said to me about, one thing that we still do now, we will get like a good piece of meat, a nice piece of meat, just a small bit, and then we'll split it, and it's more of a topping. Like, we make these really nice salads, and so the meat is more of a like a garnish, almost like a topping on it, rather than being the center of the whole thing.
The middle, yeah.
Right. And then not eating meat every day. I mean, it's okay if you're a vegetarian, but then a lot of those processed vegetarian things, they can become quite costly too.
They are expensive.
You look at a bag of, lentils, the Mediterranean salad that I was talking to you about in the last episode has chickpeas and lentils in it.
Yeah.
And the chickpeas are just, they're from a can I'm going to use because I've got them in the pantry. But the lentils I just have dried, so I'm just going to cook those up, and I'll cook a whole lot of them up and freeze the ones that I don't use. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's like $1 for I go saying that. $1 a pound, maybe, I don't know, for a can of beans.
Explain that I just teased Lovoni before we started recording because she used the word buck. I was like, I would never use that word. I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to say that word.
I'd written the intro out and sent it to Sarah, and she can sort of change whatever she likes. But I said talked about saving a few bucks here and there, and she read it, and then she stopped and she goes, "Bucks? I would never say that." She goes, "That's so Australian." I said, "Well, they use it here too in the States." But she said, "Pounds?" I said, "Well, no, then it sounds like weight." But anyway, it was just funny the different words we used for things. Like you were talking about jumpers too in the last podcast.
Yeah.
And here it's a sweater. I still call it a jumper and just figure, not to everyone, but when I'm at home, I figure my husband surely by now, after nearly 13 years,
know what a jumper is.
Must know what a bloody jumper is, right? Yeah. But, so what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, beans and legumes. Like they certainly bulk things out. Plus, they're giving us that much needed fibre that's lacking in so many people's diets. And, looking at if you want to eat meat, looking at which is fine. I eat meat.
Yeah.
More of the inexpensive cuts too, where you can cook them slower for longer.
Well, like chicken thighs are less expensive, aren't they, than like sort of chicken breast and things like that. So that's
right. Much nicer.
Another tip
too. Here anyway. Yeah.
But another tip I had was if you are able to go to any of the supermarket, whichever supermarket you happen to shop in, but go towards the end of the day, you'll often find the things which are being discounted because it's got the sort of that day's date has to be sold by. And you can get really large sort of cuts of meat, and because it was that day that it has to be sold by, there's nothing wrong with buying that at the reduced price and putting it in your freezer,
right? Because
it's still in date. There's nothing wrong with it. If you know that you'll then can use it over the next few weeks, can be up to like 50%, 75% off sometimes.
Awesome.
So that's a really big saving, and there is literally nothing wrong with any of that food. So I would always recommend that if you're either make a special trip if you're able to, but if you're in there and you see things that are heavily reduced because it's got the use by today or by tomorrow,
right,
and you have the space in your freezer, obviously if it's something that you always are going to eat, don't just buy it, because that's the other thing we all get.
Sale.
Exactly.
Oh, I know, yeah, that's not good.
Choose things that you're definitely going to enjoy and that you're going to eat, but you buy it then, put it in your freezer, get it out in the next within the next month or so, and have it. And I've done that before for when I've been hosting a big Easter lunch, and there was a big turkey crown in there that was, I think it was got 2 days left on it, so they put 50% reduction on it, and I thought, well, I'll have that, and that's come with me, and I've put it straight into the freezer.
Right.
And lamb, the same sort of thing. So I would say that's a really good tip for people. There is nothing wrong with any of that food. Vegetables the same. So if you want to talk about getting the vegetables because they're at the end of their date, then buy it, freeze it.
Right.
Use the advantage of the reduced price on them.
Right.
Just because people haven't bought them within the time scale that they say they need to be used, because there's nothing wrong with putting it in the freezer.
Do you think there's a misconception to expensive? It's expensive to eat healthy. Not healthy. I like wholesome better than healthy, but do you think there's a misconception about that?
Well, there is. I think there's some truth behind it, because it is expensive to buy fruit and vegetables. If you fill your trolley with fruit and vegetables, it's an expensive thing to do, but I think you need to pick wisely within the choice, don't you?
Right.
So, and I think if you're going to fill it with things that are not in season, like you talked about, so they are going to be more expensive, particularly if they pre-package different vegetables. So if I particularly like purple sprouting, but it always comes in a
what's that?
Little.
It's
broccoli? Like a broccoli, like
okay.
a tender stem broccoli, but a darker sort of colour.
Right.
But it always comes in the little pre-packed, plasticky type of containers. So it's really expensive to buy those things. If that was just loose broccoli, which fundamentally it's the same thing, isn't it? It's half the price.
Plus you don't have the waste either then.
The plastic waste, which I'm really aware of, because I'm amazed how much recycling I put out every single day. I'm thinking, where did all this packaging come from? But and that's another thing, isn't it? You put it out in the recycling, and does it actually ever go to actually get recycled? Probably not. It probably just ends up.
Some places it doesn't. You know what I use is the wax. I think I've spoken about this before.
Oh, the beeswax
thing. Beeswax things.
Yeah.
And, that's also, yes, you've got the money to buy those. You've got that outlay, but then, they mold around things too, unlike plastic, like Glad wrap, plastic wrap that just comes off all the time. So I use that, and I use reusable bags, like the ones that you can, rinse out.
Like silicone sort of thing.
Yeah, they're silicone bags, and they come in different sizes. So I use those too instead of just the one-time use throwaway.
I never use cling film. I know a lot of people do use it, but I don't have any in the house.
And let it dry out.
Yeah, just like I put it in a plastic container.
Oh, okay.
So I use old takeaway containers because I may have one or two of those.
Right.
And I put it in there and just put the lid on.
It's good that you're recycling things like that, Sarah. That's very good.
It's just how they got in the house to start with.
Right. That's okay. Anyway. Bit of takeaway here and there. Well, that's another thing too about the cheapies.
What's that?
About not having so much takeaway. Make the foods. I have to because, as you know, I'm in like a culinary desert where I live. Yeah. But make more stuff at home. If I, when I have a chicken, I keep I don't know, some people are rolling their eyes listening to that.
Don't make broth out of the bone.
I do so. It's so good. And then, because I make Ramsay's food as well, and you were saying about the chicken thighs, so I buy him chicken thighs with the bone in usually because they're, not as expensive. And then he has veggies and stuff in that, but that's neither here nor there. But I keep the bones, so whether they're drumsticks or the thighs, I keep the bones and keep the carcass, and then I'll make a broth. And then, but people buy broth, and it's like $2-3 for a thing of broth. I know,
it's expensive.
You can make it for, like, next to nothing, for like 50 cents.
But, it's the same thing as when, my son had his mates round at the weekend. We may well have had a takeaway or something, but I thought this, to be honest with you, that's too big for all of us to then think of that many meals of having takeaways. Right. I'm just going to make it, which is one. And even things like a chili con carne, it spreads. It really goes a long way by the time you've added the chopped tomatoes, the kidney beans, a really small pack of minced beef goes a long way by the time you've added all of that in, and then some boiled rice with it. And actually, it was a delicious meal. They all really enjoyed it.
Wholesome as well.
Yeah, and the whole, I spent a fair bit at the supermarket getting all of that stuff in because I bought them snacks and treats and some beers and stuff like that as well. But probably nowhere near, but if I'd done 2 or 3 takeaways to try and do that, I would have been 3 or 4 times over that.
Right.
So
I know, it gets expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realise how much, if they do, on a regular basis get takeaway, how much that adds up. The same with lunch. Just spend 10 minutes the night before putting a lunch together. My husband never buys lunch. He always takes his lunch. And where he is, he's surrounded by it. He could go and get whatever. Mm-hmm. But he just takes stuff that I've made. Or, he'll put something together. And we usually, if I haven't been cooking, which is rare, but there's usually something in the freezer too. Without a label. It's like a surprise thing. But
Russian roulette.
Right. I think that, if you buy lunch every day, that's expensive. I laugh
Well,
at
it
people
is.
though that say to me, eating healthy is expensive, and then as they're puffing on their cigarette,
Yeah.
or
Choice, isn't
opening
it?
their bottle of whiskey or whatever, I and this guy's a mate, and I shouldn't rat him out like this or be judgmental, but he, we talk all the time when I used to work with him. Love him to death. But, okay, we're going to lose some weight, and, and then we'd start, getting into it and doing really well. And then he'd bitch about how much, how his bills or whatever for the week, and, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. And next thing, he'd be online ordering football stuff, like football jersey and things of his team. And there's like, there's $200-300, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, you can't. And he wouldn't shop at Aldi. I kept saying to him, you drive past one every night on the way home. Just ask your wife what she wants and pop in and get it. It won't take you long. And I'm thinking, you cannot complain to me that eating healthy is expensive when you do stuff like that.
It's all choice, isn't it? That's the thing.
It's all choice. And I think after, our mortgage, probably food's one of our biggest bills.
That's and the way that the world is at the moment, people are genuinely struggling to even pay their food bills, aren't they?
Right.
Because it is such a big outlay, and there's help available with food banks and things. And I think it's really great. Over here, every exit of the supermarket, there's a basket, a trunks or things so you can put things in, and I hope that goes to the right place. I'm sure it probably does.
Right.
And you just think it's a real thing. People do need help, so it shows how expensive it is to feed your family. It's a big outlay.
Right.
So within that, everyone's having to make choices now about making some changes.
Mm-hmm.
And just cutting back on stuff. And, I've explained that to my son, and just if he sort of said, oh, can we get this, or where's this? I said, the shopping bill's just going to have to cut it back this week. It's just too much. I've got 2 dogs as well. So it's that gets added in, and their food goes up, and I cook food for them as well as their dry kibble stuff. So your budget has to go so much further than it ever did.
Right.
And then that's not even taking into account the fact that your budget might even have to have shrunk. So it's trying to make it spread as far as possible and finding these tricks, isn't it, to make that easier.
I'm and I don't, I know not everybody can do this, but I'm a big advocate for growing your own vegetables as well. Even in a pot, you can get like a cherry tomato plant for, $4. And it will yield so many tomatoes that there's no way you could eat them all. And things like herbs, I always grow my own herbs. Obviously, you're not going to do that if you don't use herbs in your cooking. But to go and buy just a dinky little packet of herbs, one, they're all wrapped in plastic here, unless you're getting it, direct from the farmers. They're so often in plastic. And then, but you can, grow them and plant some seeds that cost, like $1. And then it will just keep supplying you all summer with herbs. I love that.
Actually, that's another thing. So if you aren't able to grow your own, we, depending where you are as well in the UK, but we have like a farm shop not that far.
Right.
And last summer we went and we had a really enjoyable couple of hours, and we just walked around, and you dig up your own. You literally dig up what you want. And we had a huge basket full of fresh vegetables. I think they were trying to think what was in there. There was a great big turban squash. Is that what they're called? One of those. Nightmare to try and cut that. I mean, my God, I thought I was going to have to try. Anyway, one of those. We had carrots. We had courgettes. Loads of different sorts of tomatoes. Anyway, a huge basket. £20, the entire thing, and that would have fed us for 2 solid weeks, different sorts of meals, cutting it all up, spreading it, adding a few bits and pieces to it. But that goes a long way as well. So if you can have a look out for places like that where you can go and pick your own, and I mean, sometimes things like the fresh soft fruits are quite expensive, things like that. But, just pick and choose again, even within that. I'm trying to think what else there were. Those leeks, there's all sorts of things. So definitely worth having a look for that as well if you can find a local one.
Do you have something here? There's something called misfit markets. Like there's markets that will places that will sell. I think they'll deliver them to your house. You don't always know what you're going to get. Food that isn't perfect. So like a misshapen tomato or an orange where the skin might be discoloured or something like that. But there's actually nothing wrong with it. There's that too. That's I think you could subscribe to those or not.
I think there's one here called Oddbox or something like that. But what I have noticed is even within the supermarkets, they're starting to sell those now, aren't they? In a separate section, and there's nothing wrong with any of those.
I mean, if they sold food that it doesn't have to look perfect to be fine to cook. I mean, if tomatoes are a bit bruised or a bit soft or whatever, or a bit weird shapened, it doesn't matter if you're making a sauce out of them. Things like that. I'm always one, if you can, buying direct from farms and farmers markets. And I know if you live in like the middle of London or the middle of New York or Sydney or something, that's not always feasible. But if you're in places that you can, and you have some farms near you, and the people will sell to you, you might think, sometimes like if you go to a farmer's market, it can be a little bit more expensive, but at least you know that the farmer is getting all that money.
Yeah, exactly.
And, not just a little bit of it and the stores get the rest.
And actually, if you can go to one of these places where you can go and dig it up and pick your own, it's actually an enjoyable thing to do.
Right, it's exercise.
And you feel really quite, I don't know, sort of righteous, I suppose, when you come back with what you've dug up and you've chosen it and all that sort of thing.
That's one of the things I love about growing. We don't have a huge vegetable. I mean, we've got an enormous yard, but we don't have a massive vegetable garden because Lawrence made raised garden beds for me but this is before my knee surgery because it was really hard for me to get up and down off the ground. But it's amazing what you can grow in a little space. I'm just so mind-boggled about it, but it's so nice going out there, picking stuff, and then cooking it. Oh, it's so fresh. It's just, a nice thing to do. So if anybody does have like a little sunny spot, they might not want to plant a whole garden and, can afford to get a pot here and there with some dirt to plant a few herbs and, tomato, cucumber, whatever it is that they like to eat. They should try it. I mean, you could just stick a squash plant in the ground and it'll... Like
and don't you think it might inspire you to perhaps even try and cook some different things that perhaps you wouldn't have done before as well? Because all of a sudden, if you are going somewhere to choose the vegetables, you're confronted with things maybe you've not even seen before, and so you think, well, I'll get that and I'll give that a go, and I've look up different recipes, different style of cooking, Mexican even maybe if you fancy it.
Well, see, and look at things that aren't as expensive. Things like kohlrabi, which
what is that?
Oh, it's kind of like I'm trying to describe the taste of it. The small ones are nicer than the bigger ones, but it looks like we'll have to put a photo of it up.
Okay.
It's a green colour. They do come in like a purpley colour too, and it's not a tuber. I mean, I guess.
Was it like a potato type thing?
No, it tastes a bit like a combination of cauliflower, maybe, but it's solid. It's crunchy. So you can either cook it and then it doesn't have a lot of taste, or grate it up and put it into a coleslaw, like chop it, julienne, chop it finely. As the little baby ones, they're nice, just steamed, and tossed in butter. But it's really an inexpensive vegetable, and so. Just look for things like that too. Veggies that, like you were saying, that you might not have tried before. I mean, carrots aren't awfully expensive. I'm not suggesting people haven't tried carrots, but they don't need to be. I love the carrots with the beautiful tops on them, but they're expensive, those ones.
Yeah.
But if you get the big chunky guys, and there's so many different varieties of carrots. I mean, they're inexpensive.
Yeah. Well, I remember what else we got at that farm place. We got a red cauliflower, like a purple one.
Oh, pretty.
Which I'd never had before. So it's just even, and actually the more colourful your food, the more benefit it has for your body and all of the
right.
That's right, isn't it? I think
Yes.
your gut.
Although onions don't
thing.
have a lot of colour, but they're still good for you. But that's neither here nor there. But people, I think, if you're wanting to save money, then make your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is much cheaper than buying it. Make a broth. Try making some bread. I know there were lots of people making bread in lockdown. You couldn't even buy yeast here at one stage.
No, I know. It's sold out.
Oh, my God. And flours were sold out. I was buying my flour online because there was none at the supermarket. So I don't know whether people have continued that. I'd like to think that they would, because if you make your own bread, I mean, if you go and buy a good loaf of bread here, you're looking at like $8 or $9. If you make it yourself, it's just, it'd be less than $2. And that's even for flour that's, the unbleached, half decent flour.
Yeah.
And then, you could throw a handful of grains into there or some nuts and seeds, things like that. But some things that are expensive, I think, like cheese is quite, especially the good cheese, is quite expensive. So if you're using it, then maybe don't use as much, or use the stronger cheeses like Parmesan cheese.
I love Parmesan.
It's so good. And you don't need a lot of it. So, one, it's good for, if you're not eating a lot of it, it still adds the flavour. It's not a good melting cheese. The shit plastic cheese is a good one.
The plastic cheese is the one.
But if you buy a chunk of Parmesan, granted you've got the outlay, you can get a chunk of it from Costco for $20, $22, which sounds like a lot of money. And to, some people it is. But when I do that lasts me for ages. You can, grate it up, freeze it, or just keep it well covered in a container, or, something in the fridge, and it will last for ages. And you just use it a little bit. So the things that are a bit more expensive that you're using, maybe just use less.
Use them more sparingly. Yeah, and I think the other thing is maybe sort of switch up your weekly plan for food. So maybe one of the meals in the week is going to be a bit more elaborate. So maybe a nice piece of meat, or maybe it has got some of these more expensive ingredients in. Then on another night, there's nothing wrong with just having some pasta with some pesto, stick a load of vegetables in it to bulk it out a bit more, and then that's a really cheap bag of pasta is nothing, is it? Dried pasta,
right?
And so have that one night in the week, and it literally a pound or whatever would feed loads of you. And then there's nothing wrong with that either, is there? Just doing a bit of a mix and match during your week,
right?
Like we've said in many episodes before, couscous. Batch cooking makes a definite saving for you.
Yes.
As well as the benefits we've talked about with time before, you definitely save money by batch cooking. So that's another way. So that maybe when you're looking at your weekly plan, you can have one fresh meal, one of these cheaper meals, one of the batch ones out of the freezer, which is definitely a more cost-effective thing. Have a look for these ones which are going to be on offer or discounted, so you could get yourself one of those. I think it's trying to map out a whole week and see where your money's going to stretch the best, but still have some of these things that you really enjoy as well. So I think you don't want to deprive yourself completely unless you really have to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe when we're talking about this, we're talking about people that just are trying to eat healthier and not spend a lot of money, not people that
really struggling.
Should I pay my electricity bill or buy food?
No.
When we're not sort of claiming to be experts about that or talking about that. It's just more for just a general thing of just, everybody's aware of how much things have gone up. And we can just, save a few dollars here and there, like we were saying, or pounds even. Like a bag of rice, for example, that can be turned into a multitude of things.
So many things.
It can be turned into so many things. You can, from fried rice to just as a side for nice, Madras curry or something like that.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, you were talking about pasta. Couscous is another thing. Just even the instant couscous. You can put water in. I put stock in with it.
It does make like a vegetable stock.
Yeah, or something like that. And then, chuck a tray of veggies, go through your, fridge, especially at the end of the week or before you
use your
shop.
leftovers.
Use your leftovers, throw them all in, roast them, maybe stick some, curry powder or something like that, toss it in them, and then have that with the couscous, like over the couscous, like have a warm sort of salad, maybe a bit of yogurt if you've got that, or sour cream, just, something like that. Just get a little
I'll tell you another
creative.
top tip, as you were just talking about that then, because what is getting more expensive is to even have the oven on, because I've noticed on our smart meter that, my biggest usage in the day is when the oven has been on, because it's such a big use of electricity, isn't it, to have your, the big stove on.
Right.
So if you're able to
buy an air
multitask.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my God, you sounded like some sort of like Darth Vader instruction. I was like,
Sorry.
Okay, that, maybe buy an air fryer, but also if you've got your oven on, make it work hard for itself while it's on. So if you've got the oven on because you're roasting a chicken, maybe if you've bought a great big bag of baking potatoes, scrub them, stick them in, bake 10, 12 at a time, let them cool, and then put those in the freezer. The way to do it is to do it individually, otherwise they all stick together and then they can go back together. Do you know what I mean? So freeze them separately and then put them in. And then all you've got to do is bring it out in the morning, defrost it, and it takes 3 minutes in the microwave.
What do you do? Make mashed potatoes?
No, I have I pre-bake a baked potato.
It freezes okay? It doesn't go all soggy? No way.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then, because if you wanted to bake a potato from fresh every single time, to have that oven on every single time.
Oh, yeah.
But if what you're doing is using the most benefit from that, power source at that time. So put your baked potatoes in the bottom, do your chicken on the top, get as much into that hot space as you can to make the most of your money.
And then pop it in the freezer if you know it's going to freeze. Yeah. That's a great idea.
And then use your microwave. And obviously I defrost them before I microwave them, but then, defrost it.
To heat it up. That's where, I know an air fryer is an outlay of money, but I have to say, honestly, it's a game changer. Last night,
I've never used one.
I just cooked, because Lawrence is doing this, like intermittent fasting, we don't eat dinner together. I have like 3 small meals a day, right? And so last night I try and, make veggies or whatever for him so I know that he's, eating well. And I had a butternut pumpkin squash there, so I cut that up and I roasted it in the air fryer. One, it takes like a fraction of the time, and you're just using the air fryer. And granted, it's electricity. We have natural gas,
it's nowhere
so it doesn't
near as much.
Right, and so cooking in our oven's quite inexpensive anyway. But it saves on time, and for people that do have an electric oven, if they're wanting to save the cost there, it does make a difference, I think. I love the air fryer for that. The only thing is it's finding
somewhere to store it, isn't
I know.
It?
That's the thing that people say. We, and some of them are big. The one that I got has 2 drawers. It's the Ninja one. It's got 2 drawers, so you can be cooking some salmon and cooking some, broccolini or whatever in the other drawer.
Broccolini?
Yeah. Oh, in the air fryer?
What is broccolini?
It sounded like it sounded like what you were talking about with the sprout. You call it purple sprouted or something.
Sprouting.
But broccolini is a cross between broccoli and an Asian vegetable. And so you've got the long, skinny stalks and then a slightly looser broccoli top. And I love it.
Is it like we call it tender stem broccoli?
Probably.
Would that be it?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Broccolini is far more exciting than I
think it's an Italian word. I'm not 100% sure.
Broccolini.
But in Australia, it's everywhere. But it's harder to find here in the US. So when Lawrence sees it, because I love it, when he sees it, he just buys it. If he's out shopping, I mean, I do the same thing, but he always seems to shop in places that, he can find it. Where was I? With the broccolini. Oh, yeah.
In the air fryer.
Yeah, with the air fryer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know that would be an outlay and not everybody has them. Some of them are gigantic. Ours doesn't take up a huge amount of bench space. But because I use it all the time, it takes up, I reckon the footage takes up about as much space, maybe a little bit more than a toaster. So.
Really?
Yeah. Which is probably the reason I keep my toaster in the cupboard. But I have my air fryer out. But yeah, see, I use it all the time, which justifies it. But baked potatoes are so good. I keep meaning to put them on my website. Speaking of which, what I'm going to do is create, by the time the podcast comes out, it'll be there. I'm going to create a section on my website, I'll call it Cheap Eats. It's fun. It sounds more fun than budget cooking. Just, for recipes that aren't going to break the bank. So I'm going to have that section there for people. Okay, so generic brands, that's another thing too, where people can save money.
Yeah, own branded stuff.
Especially things like, chickpeas, black beans.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cheap anyway, but you could save $1 or two there. As I've said, frozen, eating in season. Try not to buy the overly processed things. Like those little snack packs and that you can get for your kids. I mean, they're expensive. They've got a few crackers and a bit of cheese. I know it's quick and easy, and you can just throw one in their bag. But geez, surely it doesn't take that long to cut up.
You can get a whole packet of crackers, can't you?
Right, and a block of cheese, and a little bunch of grapes. There you go, snack done, right?
Yeah.
What else do we say? Look at where you're shopping. That's another thing. Have a plan. Make a grocery list. Definitely do that. And cook at home.
Cook at home. Look for the discounted things that you can pop in the freezer.
Yeah. And then things like the starches. You want to. I mean, vegetables aren't that expensive. Not even organic vegetables. They're really not.
No.
I don't think they are. But then, I don't know. It's all relative, I guess.
It's depends what you're comparing it to, doesn't it?
Yeah. But, and if you have, if you're lucky enough to have a farm near you, talk to your farmers, see if you can get stuff from them, because I'm all about supporting the farms and, shopping locally where you can. Eating in season is a big thing. I mean, here you can buy asparagus that comes from somewhere deep in the Southern American, countries, one of the Southern American countries. We don't need to eat it. I mean, you can buy frozen asparagus. It's not as good, but, just, I don't know, eat something else, right?
Have something else, exactly.
Have something else. What I'm doing, and this is what I did last night, is I went to the pantry and looked inside, look at what you've got, too, and try and use that up before you go.
And that helps from the clearing out, so all of the clearing that you've been doing,
and the wastage. So I've got, lots of beans. It was funny you talking about making chili con carne, because I've got some ground chicken mince, ground chicken in the freezer, and I thought I really need to use that. So I've got that, and I've got black beans and pinto beans and various things. So I'm going to make chili with all of it. Maybe a green chili, because I've got lots of tomatillas left over.
Green?
From the Mexican cookbook. Tomatillas. What makes it green then? Yeah. Well, they're green.
What are tomatillas?
So they look like a tomato, but they have the paper around them. So they're a little, not sour is probably the wrong word. They're really good. They make green salsa. So, so you roast them, and and they use them obviously in Mexican cooking. So I've got them left over from the Mexican cookbook. This is the book that never goes away.
I'd say, what Mexican cookbook is this?
I have another week of work on it. Cutting down on the portion sizes with your meat too. That's another thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
Using them more as just like an add-on, as a garnish.
Yeah.
Chicken breasts. You don't need a chicken breast per person. You could split a chicken breast, especially if you get creative, and if you cut it in half horizontally, and maybe toss it in some breadcrumbs, because you've got breadcrumbs in the freezer, because from the leftover bread, you put them in the bread in the food processor, whizzed it up and froze it, right?
Make it like a schnitzel.
So you make it like a schnitzel, yeah. And then one breast can feed 2 people or, or more. If you put it over a salad, it could even feed 4. So just, getting creative like that. Another thing too, like I'm all about cookbooks, and we're going to talk about that in a sec. But there are some, good recipes online. There's some shit recipes online too, I have to say.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, it's free apart from the internet. You can go and use somebody else's.
Yeah.
Look up stuff online too, recipes online. Freshhunger.com has lots of recipes.
Check it
out. Just an awful plug there, but anyway. So, doing things like that. If you're looking for different ideas, just type in budget meals. There is a lot of people that have some good budget meal recipes, online. And, I just start with what you've got in the pantry.
Yeah. I tell you another thing that does help it look like it goes further is cut things up, but it made me think of you talking about the chicken.
Yeah.
So I was, years ago, I had a family to feed on quite a tight budget, and there was more of us at the time, and I used to cut things up a lot, particularly when I was feeding the kids. So if you just got one little tiny pizza out, they'd be thinking, is that it? All of a sudden, if you cut it up into little pieces, put some carrot sticks on the side, then maybe even just like a slice of garlic bread that then also cut in half again, your plate suddenly looks full. Right. And you could make a little go a long way by cutting things up, rather than just presenting it as a whole on the plate, and you sort of think, is that it? It's not going to feed any of us. All of a sudden it feeds 3 times the number of people that you think it's going to.
It's like sausages too, fresh sausages or bratwursts here as they're often called. You could just have a couple of those and then cook them, slice them up and toss them through some pasta with some, kale or spinach, and even, you could throw some chickpeas in there if you wanted it to make it go even further. But just, onion, can of tomatoes. Canned tomatoes aren't expensive.
No, it's pence. Literally pence.
And then, grate just a little Parmesan cheese over the top. And then you've got leftovers too, unless you're feeding a big family. But, you've got some leftovers. So there are lots of ways. If anybody has like a great idea, just, drop us a note. Let us know what
share it.
What your idea is of cheap eats. And, share it, and we'll share it with everybody. So, but yeah, I think there's some good things in there, definitely. So, Sarah, as we do every week, we talk about, our goals for the coming week. So, pertaining to this one, mine is going to be, I have 2 actually. Mine is to really try and slash some, it's like to keep to a budget. I'm going to set a budget and keep to a budget with our food bill. That's one thing. The second is using up what we already have here, whether it's, meats in the freezer, or, things that I have in the cupboard. Like I have quite an extensive Asian section, probably more so than most households. Yeah. So I'm going to go through that, and I've got lots of noodles. Noodles are inexpensive. That's another thing too. If you are lucky enough to have access to any of like a great international store or Asian store, they're often much cheaper. It's a cheaper place to shop. And, like I said, noodles are inexpensive. They usually have produce. That I find is quite a bit cheaper as well. So, so if you have access, look at places like that, if you're near a Chinatown. I don't think Indianapolis has a Chinatown, but about 40 minutes south of me is I have access to some good Asian stores, and there's certainly it's a money saver. Or I go in there, and if I'm with my husband, I'll say, I'll just be out in a minute, and he'll be like, yeah, right, whatever. Because I just get lost in there looking at everything. But coconut milk, it's a cheaper place to buy that. They also have lots of different fish, like whole fish too. If you're a bit squeamish, you might not like that, but I'll buy whole fish there because it's cheaper than buying it, the fillets of it. That's another thing too. A lot of people don't like to clean or cut things up like they, pieces of meat, or so they buy it already done or already marinated. Much cheaper doing it yourself.
Yes.
And I mean, it doesn't take that long to do it. So,
no.
The more you do yourself, the cheaper it will be. It makes a difference, whether it's cookies or whatever it is. But anyway, so they're my goals, to use up stuff I already have and to really stick to a budget with my food shopping. What about you?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to sort of ties in a little bit with me having to refocus and actually really get stuck into this, but I'm going to do a proper food plan for the week that would also, I'm quite good at budgeting for my monthly food budget anyway, but that can get carried away when you don't do a food plan, because you just suddenly have to keep popping back in, don't you, and getting this then getting that. So that's my goal for the week.
And then you don't realise how much, sorry to interrupt, but you don't realise how much you've spent on food either when you do that,
spent and waste potentially, because you've always got a little bit of something left. So I think within that food plan that I'm going to do, I'm going to see what I can eke out over a number of nights from perhaps one sort of set of cooking. So from one set of produce, can I get 2 or 3, maybe 2 nights out of it? Maybe making it a different dish, but still using some of the main ingredients. So I think that's what my goal will be this week. Okay.
Oh, that sounds good. So what about anything that you're loving? Clothes, equipment.
I'm actually loving. Well, yeah.
The air fryer.
I'm loving. Should I go and get? I'm going to have to get one. You keep.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
I'm loving a TV program over here that's called Stacey Solomon's Sort Your Life Out, because it taps into our purging and life sorting situation.
So it's called Stacey?
So Stacey Solomon is the celebrity. She's the lady that presents it, but it's called Sort Your Life Out. What the concept of it is, they basically take a family home, normally a family, but they are so overrun with stuff. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes they can't even get in through the front door properly, and they empty the house as if you were moving house, and put it into a warehouse. And this, you don't get to see the team do it, but the team sort it all into compartmented areas, so you can see exactly what you've got. So there might be 14 umbrellas, there might be 150 pairs of shoes, that type of thing. And then they have to get rid of at least 50% of their possessions.
That's awesome.
And it gets donated, recycled, or whatever it needs to be. And I mean, in the program, they've got a team of people then that are sort of sprucing the house up back at home, but not to an excessive spending. They are kind of using what they've already got, repurposing it, maybe a bit of paint, but not going out and buying a whole load of
gutting the house or something. Yeah.
No. It's kind of very much using what they've got already, and then the edited version of their possessions then comes back into the house, and obviously it gets organised, put away properly and everything. But it's just, I think it really taps into some of the things that we've been talking about, getting rid of things, making things easier to see, cleaning and all that sort of thing. So I've just been, it's a very easy watch. You can press pause and come back to it at a later date. It's not like quite an intense thing.
YouTube it, or maybe I subscribe to some English like Acorn and BritBox, but I don't think it's on them. But I'll have to see if I can YouTube it, and hopefully it's still on when I'm there.
It's just the second season. Well, if not, you can see, because so Lovoni's coming over in April, and literally staying about 2 minutes up the road, not even that from my cottage. Exciting. So you can watch it when you come over if you can't find it.
Right, I'll get addicted to it. Because she must be on. They must be on like Instagram or something like that too to follow.
Yeah, Stacey. Okay. Well, Stacey. Yeah, exactly. But Stacey's got her own life kind of Instagram page. But I don't know about whether Sorting Your Life Out has got something separate. I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Definitely be looking at that.
Yeah.
So that's my that's what you're loving.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm loving, I mentioned this before we started recording. I mentioned cottage cheese to Sarah, and she just went, oh. And I'm sure some people might know this because it's been sort of floating around on social media. But if you take, this week, this is what I did. I took cottage cheese, which I actually quite like. I'll put tomatoes in it and some balsamic vinegar and some olives.
Oh, my God, moving on.
husband, he takes that to work, not with the olives, but he takes that to work as a snack too. Anyway, it's actually quite good. But I took cottage cheese and cocoa powder with some of that, just a little of that monk fruit sugar, and I put it into a blender and I whizzed the absolute crap out of it. It became like chocolate mousse. You would not know that was cottage cheese.
I don't believe
I am serious. And I had that with some of the frozen berries that I told you that I cook up and make kind of jammy. Yeah, had that together. It was like a dessert. Nobody would know it was cottage cheese. It was all whipped and fluffy. I'm going to make it for you. I'm going to make you eat it while I'm there. That's what we should do.
You will enjoy it. You will enjoy it.
When I was saying about Sarah and I going to do a cooking video together while I'm there, I'm going to make that. I'm going to get some cottage cheese, and you must have some cocoa floating around, like unsweetened.
Yeah.
Floating around. I'll have to put sugar in it, unless I bring you some monk fruit over, but I'm always a bit careful of hopping on a plane with
must be
white
similar to
powder.
agave. Am I saying it right? Agave?
Well, no,
like
because
agave?
the agave, you think of the agave syrup? No, see, that still has carbohydrates in it. It's called monk fruit sugar. And you know, I can't find anything bad about it. I've looked, I've delved where people are criticising it. No, nothing.
It should change its name. It sounds gross.
Monk fruit, yeah. I'll make sure I put a link up for it. Monk fruit. It's, I mean, you know, it's probably not good to talk about it during the cheap eats thing, because it's more expensive than sugar. But I don't use a lot of it, so one packet of it lasts me for ages. Yeah, so there are a couple of things I'm loving. I'm loving you can turn cottage cheese into a chocolate mousse. And it has a fraction of the fat, and it has like half a cup has 13 grams of protein or something, 110 calories. And it's probably even less when it's whipped, because, you know, now you're putting air into it. And like 3 carbs or something. The fact it makes you feel sick,
it won't make you feel sick.
You'll like it. We can get strawberries. They should be in season when I'm there, or coming into season. Yeah. We can dip strawberries in it or something. I'll do something with it. Or just get some frozen stuff and I'll cook it up. You watch. Sarah's just got like a look of absolute horror on her face.
Don't make me eat the cottage cheese.
People are like about cottage cheese like they are with Brussels sprouts. You either like it
Brussels sprouts,
or you hate it. But that was the reaction. Yeah. Anyway, now it works. It's good. So our next episode, let me see. I know what it is. It is... So next episode.
Told me what it was.
Our next episode's good. It's about the power of optimism and courage. Yeah. This will be episode 12. Yeah, so that'll be a nice one, I think.
I think there's a lot to say on that.
There's a lot to say on that. There's a lot to be said for optimism too. So as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in and letting us spend about an hour of your time
of your day
your day with us. Whether you're painting, maybe doing a bit of cleaning, whatever
exercising.
You're doing. Exercising. Yeah.
Driving is a good one.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you again on the next episode. Bye for now.
See you next time. Bye.